Humans are, without a doubt, the most ridiculous species in the known galaxy. Trust me, I would know. As Chief Security Officer of the Vantarian Empire's most prestigious detention facility, I have encountered every form of sentient life catalogued by our expansive databases. But humans? They are a special brand of trouble. My name is Korvan Zul, and today marks the third rotation since we captured the infamous human rebel known as Eliza Frost. You'd think capturing one of the most wanted criminals in 7-star systems would give me some satisfaction. It doesn't. Especially not when that human has the audacity to smile at me every time I pass her cell. Morning, Chief Zul. Lovely day for an interrogation, isn't it? Her voice echoed through the corridor as I approached her containment unit. I flared my secondary breathing vents in annoyance. It's the middle of the night cycle, Frost, is it? Hard to tell when you are stuck in a box with no windows. She stretched her limbs casually, as if she were lounging in some luxury resort rather than sitting in our highest security cell. Though I suppose that was the point. The scanner beeped as I pressed my palm against it, the force field shimmering momentarily before allowing me entry. 2 armed guards flanked me, standard protocol for dealing with humans, especially this one. The Grand Inquisitor will be here in exactly 30 minutes, I informed her. I suggest you prepare yourself to reveal the location of the Resistance base. Eliza's response was to yawn dramatically. You know what I find fascinating about you Vantarians? You all talk like badly written villains from those ancient Earth entertainment videos. Reveal the location, prepare yourself. It's almost charming in how predictable it is. One of my guards, Drevin, made a guttural sound that indicated he was about to lose his composure. I raised my hand to silence him. Humans had this effect on us. Something about their casual disregard for authority triggered our most primal aggressive instincts. Mock us all you want, Frost. Your situation remains unchanged. We have confiscated all your weapons, your communication devices, your ship has been dismantled, and your crew, I paused for effect, well, let's just say they won't be staging any rescue attempts. For the first time since her capture, Eliza's smile faltered. Good. Perhaps we were making progress. Where are they? She asked, her voice notably lacking its usual sarcasm. Separated. Contained. Being questioned. I moved closer, towering over her diminutive human frame. Your pilot, Jem Tucker, has been particularly resistant. The Grand Inquisitor has taken a personal interest in his interrogation. The change in her demeanor was subtle but unmistakable. Her shoulders tensed, and her pupils dilated slightly, human physiological responses my species had studied extensively since the war began. If you have harmed a single hair on his head, I will. You will what? I interrupted, feeling a rush of satisfaction at finally cracking her insufferable composure. You are unarmed, outnumbered, and completely at our mercy. The legendary Eliza Frost, reduced to empty threats. She looked up at me, and to my surprise, that infuriating smile returned. You are right, Chief Zul. I am unarmed. She leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. So was the nuke I dragged behind me. My primary heart skipped a beat. What nonsense is this? Oh, just a little something we humans like to call contingency planning. You see, when you captured me on Nexus Prime, I was on a solo mission, completely unarmed, just as your scans confirmed. Our scans are infallible, Drevin interjected, his crest rising in defensive pride. But your scans. Eliza continued as if he hadn't spoken, detected no weapons on my person. And they were correct. But they didn't detect what followed me through the marketplace. A little device, about the size of my fist, trailing 50 meters behind me on a nanowire tether so thin it's practically invisible. I felt my scales tightening against my skin, our equivalent of what humans call goosebumps. You are bluffing, I said, but there was a tremor in my voice that betrayed my uncertainty. Am I? Tell me, Chief, have you checked the quantum signature readings in the lower detention levels in the past, 3 rotations? The blood in my veins turned cold. 3 rotations ago, exactly when she was brought in. Drevin checked the security logs for any anomalous energy readings. Since the prisoner's arrival, I ordered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't bother," Eliza said, waving dismissively. "Your security systems wouldn't detect it anyway. We have adapted our technology specifically to exploit the blind spots in Vantarian detection systems. A little gift from your former chief scientific officer, Dr. McLar. He's been incredibly helpful since defecting to our side." McLar? Impossible. He disappeared 6 cycles ago during a research expedition to the Outer Rim. The official report stated he was presumed dead after a catastrophic ship malfunction. "You are lying," I hissed, my patience evaporating. "Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not." Eliza shrugged, the very picture of nonchalance. "But here's something that's definitely true. In exactly 15 minutes, a low-yield nuclear device will detonate in your facility's central power core. The blast itself won't be catastrophic, but the chain reaction it triggers in your antimatter containment system? Well, let's just say this entire moon won't exist an hour from now." My mind raced through protocols, contingencies, evacuation procedures. If what she was saying was true, why would you do this? You'd be killing yourself along with everyone else. I couldn't comprehend such madness. Eliza's expression hardened. "Some things are worth dying for, Chief. The freedom of 3 planets, for instance. The lives of billions under your empire's boot. My own life seems a small price to pay." Lower the containment field. I barked at Drevin. "Alert command of a possible nuclear threat in the central core. Initiate evacuation protocol Zeta-9. As Drevin rushed to the communication panel, Eliza chuckled. "There it is. The panic. The fear. Feels terrible, doesn't it? To suddenly realize you are not in control? If you are lying about this," I began. "You will what? Torture me more? Execute me? Please." She rolled her eyes. Those were always on the menu anyway. The facility alarms began blaring, the pulsing red emergency lights casting an eerie glow across her face. "Oh, and one more thing," Eliza said, standing up as the containment field dissipated. "My crew isn't here. They never were." Before I could process her words, the entire facility shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and a distant boom reverberated through the structure. "That wasn't the nuke," Eliza explained calmly as she stepped out of her cell. "That would be the cavalry arriving." The communication panel erupted with frantic reports. "Chief Zul, we have multiple breaches in sectors 7 through 12. It's the Resistance fleet." "Impossible," I roared. "The Resistance doesn't have the firepower to penetrate our defenses." "They didn't," Eliza agreed. "Not until we stole 3 of your Hellfire-class destroyers last month. Funny how your intelligence never picked that up." Another explosion, closer this time, rocked the corridor. I stumbled, catching myself against the wall. "You know what your problem is, Corvin?" Eliza asked, using my personal name with insulting familiarity. "You underestimated us. All of you did. You saw our shorter lifespans, our physically weaker bodies, our divided planet, and you thought we'd be easy prey." The third explosion knocked both guards off their feet. Drevin's weapon clattered to the floor. Without hesitation, Eliza scooped it up and pointed it directly at my chest. "But what you fail to understand is that those very limitations are what make us dangerous. We don't have 300 years to live, so we make every moment count. We are not physically imposing, so we learn to build tools and weapons that amplify our strength. We are divided, yes. But that division breeds competition, innovation, and a diversity of thought your hive-minded empire could never comprehend." The weapon in her hands hummed as she adjusted the settings. I recognized the sound, maximum lethality. "Is there really a nuclear device?" I asked, desperately trying to calculate my odds of disarming her before she fired. Eliza's laugh was genuine. "No, you idiot. There's no nuke. But there is a small EMP device that's about to fry every system in this facility, including the neural implants all your guards are required to wear. As if on cue, the lights died completely. In the sudden darkness, I heard the distinctive sounds of dozens of bodies hitting the floor simultaneously as the guards throughout the facility collapsed. "Don't worry, they are not dead," Eliza said, her voice now coming from somewhere to my left. "Just unconscious for about 6 hours. Plenty of time for us to evacuate the political prisoners you have been keeping here." The emergency backup lighting activated, casting the corridor in a dim blue glow. I could see Eliza standing at the junction ahead, Dreven's weapon still trained on me. "You won't get away with this," I said, fully aware of how pathetic and cliché I sounded. "Oh, but I already have," she smirked. "Multiple times, actually. This is the third Vantarian maximum security facility I have broken out of. You'd think you guys would improve your systems after a while." The communication device on my wrist crackled to life. "Chief Zool, this is Grand Inquisitor Vex. What in the seven hells is happening down there?" I raised my wrist slowly, keeping my eyes on Eliza. "We have a situation, Grand Inquisitor. The human prisoner Eliza Frost has." "Has what? Speak clearly, Zool." Eliza winked at me and pressed a finger to her lips in a human gesture for silence. "The human prisoner has escaped," I admitted, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "What? How is that possible? Your facility is supposed to be impenetrable." "So were the last two," Eliza called out, loud enough for the communicator to pick up her voice. "Is that her?" "Zool, capture her immediately, or I will have your crest for this." "I'm afraid the chief is a bit indisposed at the moment," Eliza replied. "But don't worry, I will take good care of him." "Listen to me, human." The Grand Inquisitor's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "Whatever you are planning, it won't succeed. I have an entire armada at my disposal." Eliza corrected. "You had an armada. Check your orbital defense platforms." "Oh wait, you can't, because they are not there anymore." The silence from the communicator was deafening. "Your pride of Vantaria? That massive flagship you are so fond of, currently being boarded by my people. Your secondary fleet at Nexus Prime, engaged with our allies from the Arcturian Collective. And your reinforcements from the home world? Let's just say they are dealing with some navigational issues in hyperspace." "This is impossible," the Grand Inquisitor whispered. "No single species could coordinate an attack of this magnitude." "You are right," Eliza agreed. "No single species could. That's why we didn't do it alone. Turns out, when you spend centuries conquering and subjugating other civilizations, they tend to harbor some resentment." "Who knew?" "Whoa!" The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from a connecting corridor. A moment later, a group of figures emerged, some human, others clearly from various alien species I recognized as former subjects of the Empire. One of the humans stepped forward. "Commander Frost. The detention levels are secure. We have begun evacuating the prisoners to the transport ships." "Excellent work, Lieutenant Parker. Any casualties?" "None on our side. Minimal on theirs, mostly just wounded pride." Eliza grinned. "Perfect. What about Tucker? Did he complete his part of the mission?" "Yes, ma'am. The antimatter facility has been neutralized, and he's extracted all the data from their central computer. He's waiting for you on the command shuttle." I felt like I was drowning in humiliation. Every word they exchanged revealed how thoroughly we had been outmaneuvered. "Well, Corvan," Eliza said, turning back to me. "This has been fun, but I'm afraid our time together is coming to an end. If you think I'm going to beg for mercy, you are sorely mistaken," I said, straightening my posture to maintain what little dignity I had left. "Beg? No, you misunderstand. I'm not going to kill you." She lowered the weapon. "I'm going to do something far worse. I'm going to let you live so you can explain to your superiors how one unarmed human woman and a handful of inferior species brought down the pride of the Vantarian Empire." She tossed the weapon at my feet. Consider it a professional courtesy from one security expert to another. And next time, maybe don't announce your security protocols quite so loudly where prisoners can hear them. As she turned to leave with her rescue party, she paused. Oh, and that nuke I mentioned? Total fiction. But the look on your face? Priceless. With a casual salute, she disappeared down the corridor, leaving me standing alone amidst the ruins of my career and the beginning of what I suddenly realized might be the end of our empire. Because if there's one thing more dangerous than an armed human, it's an unarmed one with nothing to lose and everything to prove. And Eliza Frost had just proven her point in the most devastating way possible. Grand Admiral Thexus slammed his fist against the tactical display, sending holographic star systems scattering across the war room. 12 facilities. 12 of our most secure installations compromised in less than a standard month. I kept my head bowed, my crest flattened in submission as the Admiral's rage washed over me like toxic rain. 3 weeks had passed since the humiliating incident with Eliza Frost, and my once promising career now hung by the thinnest of threads. Tell me, Zool, Thexus hissed, his voice dangerously soft. What is the common factor in all 12 breaches? I swallowed hard. Humans, sir. Humans. He roared, his secondary breathing vents flaring violently. It's a species that hasn't even mastered sustainable fusion on their own miserable planet. It's a species so primitive they spent millennia killing each other over imaginary borderlines. And yet somehow, they have made the mighty Vantarian Empire look like bumbling hatchlings. The other officers in the room kept their gazes fixed on the floor. No one wanted to attract the Admiral's attention, not when his rage scales were pulsing that particular shade of crimson. Permission to speak freely, Admiral? I ventured. Thexus waved a clawed hand dismissively. What more could you possibly have to say that would redeem your catastrophic failure, Zool? I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood our enemy, sir. I straightened my posture, ready to face whatever punishment my words might trigger. We have been analyzing humans through a Vantarian lens. It's been ineffective. The Admiral's eyes narrowed to slits. Explain. Our tactical approaches are based on millennia of conquest against species that think like we do, strategically, methodically, with clear hierarchies and long-term planning. Humans don't operate that way. They are chaotic, unpredictable. They improvise constantly and seem to thrive in disorder. So your defense is that humans are too random to anticipate? That's hardly a revelation worthy of forgiveness, Zool. No, sir. My point is more specific. I activated my datapad and projected a series of images, footage from various security breaches, including my own. Look at their patterns. When cornered, a Vantarian commander follows protocol. A human? They create new protocols on the spot. When we cut off one avenue of escape, they don't retreat, they smash through walls to make new paths. They don't just adapt to changing circumstances. They actively create chaos to force those changes. Thexus studied the footage, his rage momentarily tempered by intellectual curiosity. You have a proposal, I presume? Yes, Admiral. I request permission to form a specialized task force, a human psychology unit, not to study them as specimens, but to learn to think like them, to become as unpredictable as they are. The war room fell silent. What I was suggesting bordered on heresy in our rigidly structured society. After what seemed like an eternity, Thexus spoke. Granted. But Zool, he leaned in close, if you fail me again, you won't face demotion. You will face execution. Is that understood? Perfectly, Admiral. Good! Now, tell me about this Eliza Frost. What makes her different from other human commanders we have encountered? I hesitated. She's not different, sir. That's what makes her dangerous. She's actually quite typical of her species, which means there are billions more just like her on their home world. Thexus's scales paled slightly. The Emperor will not be pleased to hear that. But no, sir. But he needs to. 6 cycles later, I found myself aboard the stealth cruiser Phantom Blade, orbiting the human colony world of Novaris. My team, a hand-picked group of Vantarians who had shown unusual flexibility in thinking, monitored communication channels with intense focus. Commander Zool, Lieutenant Crix called from her station. We have intercepted a transmission matching Frost's encryption pattern. On screen, I ordered, feeling a familiar twist in my gut at the mention of that name. The message was brief, just a set of coordinates and a timestamp, but it was enough. After months of tracking, analyzing, and attempting to predict the unpredictable, we had finally located our target. Prepare the insertion pod, I told my second-in-command Renva. Stealth Protocol Omega. No communication with Fleet Command until the operation is complete. Sir? Renva's confusion was evident. Standard procedure requires that we alert Admiral Thexus immediately upon. Lieutenant, I interrupted, what is the primary directive of this unit? She straightened. To think like humans, sir. Exactly. And what would Eliza Frost do if she were in our position? A slow understanding dawned on Renva's face. She would act without waiting for approval, create her own initiative. Precisely. The moment we alert command, we create communication traffic that can be intercepted. We lose the element of surprise. So we are going to do what humans do, act now, report later. Renva nodded, a newfound respect evident in her stance. Yes, Commander. The insertion was flawless. Our pod, designed with reverse-engineered human stealth technology, landed in the dense forest 5 kilometers from the coordinates without triggering any sensors. My team moved through the undergrowth with practiced precision, our body temperature masking suits rendering us virtually invisible to human thermal scanners. As we approached the location, an abandoned mining facility nestled into the side of a mountain, I raised my hand, signaling for the team to halt. Something's wrong, I whispered. This is too easy. Renva scanned the area with her multi-spectrum visor. No guards, no perimeter sensors, no defense systems of any kind. It could be a trap. It is definitely a trap, I agreed. The question is, what kind? I considered our options. The old me would have retreated, called for reinforcements, followed protocol. But that approach had failed consistently against humans. So instead, I asked myself, what would Eliza do? We are going in, I announced, but not through any entrance they might expect. 40 minutes later, we had bypassed the facility entirely and cut our way through the mountain rock itself, creating our own entry point into what appeared to be an auxiliary storage chamber. The space was dark and dusty, clearly unused for some time. Life signs? I whispered to Draz, our sensor specialist. He checked his equipment and nodded. Multiple signatures, approximately 30 meters ahead. One of them matches Frost's biorhythm pattern. My heart's quickened. After all this time, after the humiliation she had inflicted, I was finally close to capturing the human who had made a mockery of our empire. We moved silently through the abandoned corridors, following Draz's guidance until we reached a sealed door. Beyond it, we could hear the murmur of voices. Breach configuration, I ordered, and my team moved into position with practiced efficiency. Renva placed a molecular disruptor on the door lock while the others prepared stun weapons. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. The door disintegrated, and we surged through the opening, weapons raised. And then we froze. The room was indeed occupied, but not by the resistance fighters we expected. Instead, dozens of small humans, children, I realized with shock, stared back at us with wide, frightened eyes. They were huddled in groups, some clutching simple toys, others holding what appeared to be learning devices. Standing protectively in front of them was Eliza Frost. Well, she said, her voice lacking its usual sarcasm. I was wondering when you'd show up, Corvin. What is this? I demanded, my weapon still trained on her. Where are your fighters, your weapons? There are no fighters here. No weapons. Just refugees. She gestured to the children. Kids whose parents were executed for the crime of opposing Vantarian rule. orphans of your empire's pacification campaigns. I scanned the room again, disbelief warring with mounting horror. This is a school? A safe house, actually. But yes, we teach them here too. Eliza's eyes hardened. Someone has to make sure they know the truth about what happened to their families, about who's responsible. One of the smaller humans stepped forward, a little female with hair the color of Novaris's setting sun. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old by human standards. "Are you going to kill us too?" she asked, her voice small but remarkably steady. The question hit me like a physical blow. In all my years of service to the Empire, I had never directly confronted the consequences of our conquest. The collateral damage had always been abstract, distant numbers in reports, not faces looking up at me with accusing eyes. "No," I said, lowering my weapon slightly. "We are here for Frost, not for you." "Then you will have to go through them to get to me," Eliza said calmly. "That's how it works." I stared at her, searching for some trick, some deception. "You are bluffing. You wouldn't use children as shields." "I'm not using anyone as anything. I'm simply stating a fact. These kids are under my protection. You want me? You deal with that reality." The small human moved closer to Eliza, taking her hand. Others followed, forming a protective circle around her. It was, perhaps, the most effective defense I had ever encountered, not because I couldn't physically move them aside, but because doing so would force me to become something I had never wanted to be. "Stand down," I ordered my team, who looked at me in shock. "Commander?" Renva questioned, her weapon still raised. I said, "Stand down, Lieutenant." "That's an order." Reluctantly, my team lowered their weapons. Eliza studied me curiously. "Well, this is unexpected." "The great Corvan Zul, showing restraint?" "What happened to the ruthless security chief I met a few months ago?" "He spent too much time trying to think like a human," I admitted. "It appears to have had side effects." For the first time in our adversarial relationship, Eliza Frost offered me a genuine smile, not the mocking one I was accustomed to, but something tinged with what might have been respect. "Side effects like developing a conscience? That must be inconvenient in your line of work." "Extraordinarily," I agreed. Though I suspect my career was already effectively over. "So what now, Corvan? You can't take me without harming the children, which you seem unwilling to do. And you can't leave without me, or your superiors will execute you for failure." She was right, of course. I was trapped between impossible choices. "There is," I said slowly, the words feeling foreign in my mouth, "a third option." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "The Vantarian Empire has never been defeated in its 3,000 years of expansion. Not once. Until we encountered humans." I took a deep breath. Perhaps it's time we acknowledged that some species aren't meant to be conquered. The shock on my team's faces would have been comical under different circumstances. "Commander, this is treasonous talk," Renva warned, her hand drifting back toward her weapon. "No, Lieutenant. This is strategic reassessment." I turned back to Eliza. "I have spent months studying humans, trying to understand how you think, how you fight. And I have reached a conclusion that the Empire won't want to hear you can't be defeated, not in any meaningful, lasting way. Even if we killed every human soldier, you would rise again, generation after generation, fighting from the shadows, teaching your children to resist, just as you are doing now." "That's surprisingly insightful for a Vantarian," Eliza admitted, "which leaves me with a choice. Continue serving an empire pursuing an ultimately futile goal, or," I hesitated, then finished, "or help bring about a change in policy." "Defection?" Eliza asked incredulously. "You?" "Information," I corrected. "Strategic assessments, communication protocols, weaknesses in planetary defense systems that would make negotiations suddenly seem like a more attractive option to the Imperial Council." The room fell silent as the weight of my offer hung in the air. "Why would you do this?" Eliza finally asked, suspicion evident in her voice. I looked at the children surrounding her, their faces a living testament to the true cost of empire. Because today I realized that I don't recognize the reflection staring back at me anymore. And I need to, before it's too late. Eliza studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, Corvanzul. Let's talk about how to end a war. As we sat down to begin negotiations, a Vantarian commander and a human resistance leader surrounded by the children of conflict, I realized that Eliza Frost had taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't a nuke dragged behind you on an invisible tether. Sometimes it's simply the truth, waiting patiently to be acknowledged. And like Eliza herself, the truth had been there all along, unarmed but far from harmless.